Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Вітаю вас в українському кризовому медіа-центрі на нашій дуже важливій сьогоднішній події. Це всеукраїнський
So this is the, I welcome everyone at the All-Ukrainian Forum of rural development in the context of European integration. And this event is organized under the auspices and support of USAID's agricultural support program.
Скажімо так, просвіт.
So the aim of this event is to start, to launch, so to say, cooperation with the purpose of spreading the practices similar to those of the European Union in this field, and determine what Ukraine can and should do, and what are the roles of agricultural businesses, of local communities, and so on. So this event, we see it as an opportunity to verify, so to say, whether we are on the same page, in terms also, it is also important in terms of drafting of the bills and, various other statutory changes and amendments. Let me now introduce our colleagues and participants our participants who are going to join us through the Zoom platform. Our program for today's meeting is a number of presentations by Mr. Volodymyr Kuchma, the head of the All-Ukrainian Association of the Communities, Ms. Olena Shuliak, the chair of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Government and Local Self-Governance, Ms. Oleksandra Azarkhina, who is a deputy minister for the communities and territories and infrastructure of Ukraine. And we are also expecting Mr. Marian Zablotskyi to join us, who is he's the vice chair, he's the chair of the subcommittee, rather, on local taxes and levies. And also two foreign presenters. These are Mr. Tom Jones, who is the president of the European Alliance of Rural Communities, and Jonas Pupius, who is an advisor or a counselor to the Department of Rural Development of the National Payment Agencies of Lithuania. Also, Maria Yeroshko, the head or the manager of the project of German-Ukrainian agropolitical dialogue, and Mr. Igor Abramyuk and Ivan Pankiv, who is the president of the National Association of Agricultural Advisory Services. The last several people will join us online. So let us now start with Mr. Volodymyrovich Kuchma's welcome remarks. Dear participants, dear representatives of foreign assistance projects, dear foreign participants and guests, I'm glad to hear you and welcome you, on behalf of our organization in the form of rural development in the context of European integration of Ukraine. It was organized together with the Association of the Farmers of Ukraine and the Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine, with the support of the USAID project Agro Support. This forum was needed for the self-government, local self-government bodies and authorities, is in our view very topical, because Ukraine embarked upon the road of European integration, and we should then harmonize, or for that purpose we should harmonize our agricultural policy with those policies as they are in the European Union. So we invited our distinguished guests so that they can share with us their experiences in developing and implementing agricultural policies and all its aspects. We have invited the experts, the farmers, the representatives of local governments, the representatives of a number of international projects. So the aim of this forum is for us all here in Ukraine to better understand how we can adopt and implement the main principles of agricultural policies that are used in Ukraine. Let me remind you that our organization was established, founded 13 years ago, and it is now the principal organization that tries to further the interests of local communities in the rural areas. It now unites 786 different bodies and entities, including three-fourths of all the local communities in the rural areas of Ukraine. So our organization has always been active with regard of the development of government policy in this area. Especially, it is important, especially today, as we go through the period of hostilities in which some rural communities are also affected, and their interests are not always in the focus of attention, not always a priority for the government and central authorities. Together with the government and other institutions and associations, I hope that with this new knowledge we'll be able to develop and promote here in Ukraine advanced agricultural policy. Thank you again, all of you who has kindly agreed to take part in this forum and in our effort to implement the best practices in our rural development policies. Let me wish your forum a success.
Севич, заступник міністра аграрної політики.
Thank you very much, Mr. Volodymyr. Mr. Dmitrosevich, who is a deputy minister, has also already joined. And let me now turn the floor over to our next presenter. Good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Yes. I'm glad to welcome you, says Mr. Haidu, who is the head of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Agricultural and Land Policies. Let me start by thanking our military, and also our agrarians who have been actively working on producing as much agricultural produce as possible. This or last year's crop was the overall crop was 100 and was one third less than that of the previous year of 2021, when the overall tonnage of all the crops amounted to 106 million tons. But this year, regrettably, it's going to be, for instance, only one third of the arable lands are going to be used for agricultural purposes as compared to the previous years. So it's our task to make our agricultural development stable and aimed at European integration. In this context, our committee has been constantly working and we have been consistently working in the area of harmonization of Ukrainian legislation, agricultural legislation, with that of the European Union. Almost 5 new statutory instruments have been produced by our subcommittee. We have now been actively working on the regulation of the GMO, on the development of wine production, and the other important sub-sectors of agricultural sector. I think that all these efforts are promoting our approximation to the European Union.
Територій, інфраструктури, соціальної.
Also, the issue of taxation has not been lost by us. He was in the center of our attention. You know how important it is. And it has been. And we are particularly grateful to our partners, foreign partners, with the help of the 50 million euros grant from the European Union. We have managed to launch a number of grant support programs for a number of farms. For this year, as more funds of the national budget are channeled into the defense sector, military production, and so on. Still 67 billion of hryvnias are supposed to be allocated for agricultural developments, but these will be in the forms of the loans, but we are working on the state guarantees, government guarantees for these loans, and also 200 million hryvnias for a number of other products. We are developing the system of grants for support of a number of specific farms specializing in production of wine, in gardening, and in other important areas. Also, international assistance has been drawn for the development of the agriculture in Ukraine. For instance, the subsidies program was developed for small farms who have less than 100 cows or bulls, and also there have been a number of partners who have supported our small farms development, and also the other areas of our branches of our agriculture. Support of our agriculture means support of both our rural population and urban population, and the country as a whole as well. Thank you. Ms. Mariana, Mr. Marian, I'm sorry. The floor is yours. I welcome all the participants. Thank you for your attention. I would like to draw your attention to the long-term changes that are going to happen in the nearest future. Ukraine has received an invitation to join the European Union, and during the last visit of the President of the European Commission, specific steps have already been outlined, or were outlined. And it was mentioned that, for instance, it was determined that by 2027, Ukraine is supposed to become a member of the common market of the European Union. What is noteworthy here is that Ukraine does not have its quota, for instance, of the members of European Parliament, so it does not wield the same influence as the other countries. But Ukraine is still on its way of becoming a full-fledged member of the common market of the European Union. You can imagine how it would be when there is, for instance, no border between Ukraine and Poland, and when there is free circulation of people, of capitals, of resources. Ukrainians are free to go to any country of the European Union. European companies are free to render their services here. Ukrainian companies can render their services also both here and in Europe. And so many of you has probably heard that perhaps half of the common budget of the European Union, around 900 million euros, is spent on support of the agricultural sector. It is important that for Ukraine, in the sense that Ukraine might claim, for instance, about 10 billion euros, for instance, or even more. Even if Ukraine gets the at least 10% share of those subsidies, it will be a great support for Ukrainian national budget. It would be equal to an entire national budget of Ukraine in the pre-war period. So that's important for the balance of payments and, in general, our economic development. But we need to cover yet a lot of ground. We know that the European Union's major factor in the agricultural sector is support of small farms, not even medium-sized farms, but small farms. Who are these small farmers? These are the farms that independently develop or produce, rather, close to 100% of their produce. So it means that this definition is close to a definition of a household in the rural area. And there is one point of view that a large number of these small farms is a sign of poverty, actually, because if farms develop successfully, they enlarge. And so in learning more about European practices in agricultural sector, we understand that it's not consistent with that of the European Union, with the definition that they use in the European Union. We understand that there are economically developed farm and agricultural enterprises, so to say, here in Ukraine, just several thousand of them. And so in our relations with the EU, we need to take into account the definition of a small farm that can be applied here in Ukraine. So if it's a small farm that produces autonomously, let's put it this way, all its produce, it can claim some support, some subsidies from the European common funds of the European Union. It's not going to be a quick process for our small farmers to start claiming these funds, but I'm sure that with the time being, our farmers will get better understanding of the prospects of cooperation with the EU. We might maybe alter somehow our definition of a farm, and then we will be better ready for the reception of these funds, the European Union funds. The more people will become eligible for this assistance from the EU, the better it is for the agricultural sector of Ukraine. We should be ready by a certain point in time when Ukraine approximates itself close enough to the European Union to state that we have this number of farms who can claim, who are eligible, in fact, to receive the funds of the European Union. Thank you. It's very important what you said, because even in the Ministry of Agricultural Policies, there is no clear understanding of many of the issues that you mentioned, especially the definitions that you mentioned. In the European Union, these are well-developed policies, and some of the aspects of these policies are still lacking in Ukraine. So now let me turn the floor over to Mr. Marian. Thank you. When we speak about our aims, we know that they are those that have already been mentioned by Marian: free circulation of people and capital, and we need to understand better what is the path ahead that we need to go. It will require significant efforts. But at a joint meeting of the European Commission Agricultural College and the Ukrainian government's representatives for agriculture, Ukraine's agriculture has been evaluated and get a number of assessments, especially in such. There was a document also developed concerning also a number of specific branches of Ukraine's agriculture. This document is important for us in as much as it outlines the vision of the European Union of what's happening and what is the situation in Ukraine's agriculture. And as in the work, in the activity of activities of the ministry, there are a number of priorities. Let us recall some of these aspects that are the most important. First of all, we have a number of commitments already vis-a-vis the European Union. And next, we have this program of Euro integration that is become a benchmark program, so to say, for us. And we also are trying to move not only within the association agreement approximation of legislation envisaged by the association agreement, but also we are trying to take the other bodies of law and approximate them to those of the European Union. I hope that at least by the end of this year, we'll enter negotiations with the European Union. But there is a number of hurdles here. We know that there is a number of parameters that a country must match, so to say, in order to become a candidate country for the accession. We need to do a lot in this realm, even for the procedure of the negotiations to be launched. For instance, in the area of the rule of law, and because the rule of law is the cluster which is the first cluster in the accession negotiations. Negotiations in this cluster will open up our progress to the next clusters, including the chapters concerning, in the course of the economic negotiations, concerning the agriculture. So that's for all of us to bear in mind how difficult is the path that we need to go through. So as we know that 35 to 40% of Ukraine's economy is the agricultural sector, we know how important a priority is agriculture in the European Union. We can understand the amount of work and the scope of work that we need to do. Both Ivan and Marian and Oleksandr Haidu have already highlighted the need of further work in terms of harmonization of the legislation, including, for instance, the creation of an agricultural register. As soon as we do all these tasks, some of which are quite specific, we will open, or the road will be open for us, the way to go ahead. And as last year, for instance, or even this year, the program was launched for the support of small farms who have less than 100 hectares of areas and who have less than 100 cows in their farms. We are going to follow through and add to that program not only these aspects of or these branches of agriculture, but also the growth of goats and the other domestic animals that are traditional for Ukraine. So in order to consolidate, so to say, our positions before we start negotiations with the European Union, we need to better assess our own situation. We are going to do that in cooperation, in consultations with the trade associations. And we are also going to review our position vis-a-vis what they call CAP or CAP in the European Union, Common Agricultural Policy. What will be needed here in Ukraine, what will be needed to be done before we start this process of approximation to the European Union. We already have seen a number of reservations in some of the member countries of the European Union with regard to Ukraine's agricultural sector, which is rather large, joining into the common market of the European Union. But I'm sure that these are minor concerns and they will be overcome quite soon. And Ukraine will, in a dignified way, enter the joint market of the European Union. Thank you for your support of our initiatives. Our next speaker. Thank you, colleagues. We already have a number of different fora for wide spread and active discussion of various aspects of Ukrainian agriculture. I'm very glad to be able to become a part of this broad dialogue. And certainly we have an opportunity to discuss the most important issues for us, which is funding of the development of agriculture, and also the other issues in our agenda, agricultural agenda, if we may say so. So these are the main aspects that deal with the foundations, very foundations of full-fledged, full-scale development of Ukraine's agriculture. And as a significant portion of Ukraine's population, significant share rather, continues to live in the rural areas in Ukraine, I think that the role of rural communities has also not diminished, not only not diminished, but also has grown recently. So we are trying also to follow our priorities by providing advisory and consultative services. We promote Ukraine's rural legislation approximation to that of the European Union. And one more important area in the context of Euro integration is and post hostilities, post-war development is rural development and development of rural communities. I've read recently I heard the example of Tiptia, if I'm not mistaken, as a pilot project for this agricultural cooperation, and it was visited, that community was visited by a number of ambassadors from the European countries. And so all the aspects that have been successfully developed there are a good example of how this foundation of agricultural development in Ukraine can proceed. So the methodology of agricultural development, despite the consequences of war, has been applied already in about 20% of rural communities of Ukraine, which means that rural communities are willing to develop, to reform, and therefore our organization is going to continue its support of the Ukrainian rural communities. Thank you for an opportunity to speak out, and I wish you every success. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again remind you that our today's event is sort of a brainstorming session, so that we all have more or less coherent understanding of what is our agricultural policy vis-à-vis the agricultural policies of the European Union. There is a number of bills that are being now analyzed and developed and analyzed and developed by the committee of the Verkhovna Rada and the policies pursued by the Ministry of Agriculture. Oh, now I can see Mrs. Azarkhina, who has joined us. Let me turn the floor to her immediately. Thank you. Thank you. It's very important for us, as for the ministry, to be aware of these efforts of agricultural development. But it's impossible without knowing, specific needs, specific situations in specific areas and territories of the country. Therefore, we think that our role in this rural development, policy development, is also important. And now I would like to point out, or to focus rather your attention on a number of issues that are important for our joint work. At least 6%, according to our joint assessments, are taken by the trade in grain. As we can see, the grain trade and the so-called Black Sea Initiative, its efficiency is diminishing, and from the standpoint of the Ministry of the Restoration of, we see that we should not leave our rural communities alone, so to say, without any support with regard to their, if I understood her correctly, export capacities. They're all speaking so quickly, so fast. Undoubtedly, we are all on the same page, but we should all understand that there is no room for delays, so to say. The previous speaker mentioned the importance of rural policies and planning component of these policies, and these plans of the restoration, they should be somehow harmonized with the mechanisms of the regional development, regional policies. Therefore, for the communities and for us is important to have common understanding, so to say, and common approach to the information and data that characterize agricultural development and that we receive from them. The registry of the damaged assets is an important tool for the assessment of the situation in various areas. And let me emphasize, let me stress it once again, that only reliable and real-time data is the basis for correct assessments and development of accurate agricultural policies. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have now two programmatic, so to say, presentations. The first is from Mr. Jonas Pupius, who is the counselor of or the advisor of the Department of Agricultural Development. And the second from Tom Jones, who is the president of the European Alliance of Rural Communities. After that, we are going to turn the floor over to our other participants, for instance, representatives of the rural communities and community councils. And let me now ask to have the translation of Mr. Pupius's speech displayed.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you will lead the presentation after my introducing speech?
And the same time, please. Включіть, будь ласка, презентацію.
Yes, so it's really high honor to participate in this event, and thank you for the invitation and possibility to be here. And just in short about myself, I can say that just I am born and lived all the time in agriculture. I finished University of Agriculture Administration of Rural Development, and from 2005 started working in the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Development Department. Wrote two programming period documents for 2007 and 2014 and 2014-2022 periods. General budget was more than 5 billion euros, and finished working as advisor to the minister, and now 3 years work as advisor in the National Paying Agency. So, and today I will just represent a short information about the policy of rural development and like the part of EU Common Agricultural Policy. And of course, I will speak about tools to support rural development in the European Union, and also will say some examples from Lithuania. I mean, what we implemented and what we faced, the challenges. So, first of all, what does it mean, Common Agricultural Policy? So it's agricultural, society, Europe, and farmers. And this common agricultural policy connects all together. And the main issues is to support farmers and improve agricultural productivity, safeguard European Union farmers to make a reasonable living. Also, help tackle climate change and the sustainable management of natural resources. And also keep the rural economy alive by promoting jobs in farming, agri-food industries and associated sectors. And also maintain rural areas and landscapes across all the European Union. What is more important to mention is that the Common Agricultural Policy is based on two most common funds. So it's European Agricultural Guarantee Fund and European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development. And of course, for everything to implement is necessary legal acts. So it's a treaty of the functioning of European Union for this period, I mean, which started in 2014 and is still going now. It's 8 regulations and also directives. there are like really huge number of directives how to implement all these regulations. And now it's the new common agricultural policy time, so it's has few futures. First of all, is European Green Deal. It's really a hard challenge to implement, but it has really common place in all common agricultural policy now, and it means that all the policy must be more simpler and more efficient. And this new CAP connected two pillars in one. Like before, it was agriculture production support and rural development policy. So now it would be like in one place, these two separate pillars. I mean, from now to future. And so it was information about common agricultural policy. And now it's like the place to talk about what does it mean rural development policy. Just to explain that it's not only the agriculture, it takes really more. It's rural communities and workplaces, public and private infrastructure and environment. Also agriculture and non-agriculture activities and forestry. So it takes everything what is around the rural areas and inside the rural area and create the sustainable and economically efficient life for all the citizens who lives in that place. So can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So it's in general that rural development would be implemented where relationships between EU and national funds, of course institutions, first of all, of course, Ministry of Agriculture and others, and of course, it is necessary to have consulting and training, and for example, in Lithuania and other countries have even separated institution for that, specially designed for consulting and training in agriculture sector, and of course beneficiaries, because all that process is going like one main body, and it's necessary that all parts has to work really right and to understand each other, because only in that case it's possible to have really efficient rural development. Because from the beginning it's really important to know where to go and to find the points where it's most necessary to go. I mean, the strategy must be made by the needs of your nation and your farmers, and everything would be created around it. So it's really necessary, first of all, to know how and where to go. So in that case, that rural development would work really efficiently. Yes, next slide, please. Yes, and now for this time in European Union for rural development, it's possible to participate for support and to get support by these 5 different EU funds. So it's European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development, like the main fund. After that, European Regional Development Fund, European Social Fund, even Cohesion Fund, and European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. So all, of course, like to save example, in Lithuania, all these funds are administrated by different ministries. For example, European Agricultural Fund and Rural Development and European Maritime and Fisheries Fund is ruled by the Ministry of Agriculture, but other free funds are administered by the other different ministries. So it's like one of the main challenges to collect all this data in one place and just to keep going on the really efficient rural development. And please, next slide. Yes, preparation for joining European Union, it's really important steps, and of course next year would be 20 years after Lithuania joined the European Union. And during this 20 years, even now, it's possible to say that we made quite many mistakes, and it's really good to make really, how to say, wide and strong background in the beginning. The beginning is negotiation with European Union, conditions, and of course amount, what to expect and what conditions you will get something. So it's really maybe most important step. After that goes the instrument for the pre-accession assistance for rural development. After that goes preparation of treaty of access. After that, preparation of legal acts in the country, inside the country. And of course, after that, it goes to changes in institution structures and establishment of new institutions. Of course, creation of legal acts and for the support and all the administration process. And these all processes in Lithuania took 4 years to prepare. But of course it depends on the country and the experience on it, because it was really challenging to find a good balance between what is necessary for a country and what is required by the European Union, because there are some regulation and some norms what European Union would like to keep, and we have to implement it. But of course, there are some details and some measures where is possibility to make it more free. But anyway, everything is necessary just to analyze and to prepare really precisely. So next slide, please. Yes, so the measures of E-part, now I will talk what measures are now. So it means investments in assets of agricultural holdings. It's like the main measure where it's possible to make the investments to the, like we say, to the metal, I mean to tractors, other agricultural machinery and so on. Of course, the buildings and equipment, what is necessary for agricultural activity. Second measure is support for setting up of producer groups. It's like the cooperation, support for cooperation and creation of groups which can sell the agricultural production in better conditions and better prices. The fourth measure is investments into assets concerning processing and marketing of agriculture and fishery products. So it's a measure where the support is given for the processing, like you to make, for example, from milk, cheese, and butter, and so on. The fourth measure is environment and climate and organic farming. Pilot on soil erosion. So between these new candidate countries, it's not really a popular measure, but also it's related with environment, and it's really important now issue in European Union. The fifth measure is implementation of local development strategies, leader approach. So it's like where it goes to the local points, I mean, to the communities, and it goes from down to up. It means that all the communities and after that can go to the local action groups, and it's support for acting and for implementing their own projects. And investments in rural public infrastructure is really important investments because it's related with the roads, with the water supply, and everything what is inside the rural area and what is needed for the really convenient life. So just I can show just something what can be seen in the next slide, how it looked before and after. I mean that the beginning was really, how to say, with old tractors, old equipments, and now we have wind plants, we have the newest brands of tractors and harvesters and so on. The next slide, please. So continuing talking about measures of E-part, it is farm diversification and business development. So it is like a measure for not agricultural business, where you can, for example, create your own business in rural area, like, for example, car services or any other supply of any other services what is needed in rural area. It can be bakery, it can be even related with internet supply or internet functioning, and everything what is related with this creation of new workplaces and keeping the old ones to implement rural areas citizens' ideas, just to create their own business and to create the incomes for them. The eighth measure would be improvement of training. So it's measure for training and to know and to get the knowledges and to get the information what is needed and necessary for implementation of really different projects, measures, and so on. Technical assistance is more for the managing authorities, I mean for ministry or for agency to, how to say, to keep their functioning and in their work to make it really work properly and without any challenges. Advisory service is advisory possibility to get some advisory from the consulting institution or any other, for example, created public body, or for example, any even from other country public advisory services. And of course, establishment and protection of forests. So it's the measure where you can invest to the creation on planting of new forest trees, and of course for cutting of trees, and also buying equipments for doing forest business. So we can go to the next slide. So the slide also showing the vegetable farms difference before and after the support. So in the beginning, before joining the EU, without support, it was really old greenhouses, and now we have greenhouses with the solar plants, possibility to grow vegetables all 24/7 with the all possibilities and newest technology. And I can say just the example that it gave the chance to we have a productivity 3, even 4 times higher than in this just simple old greenhouse. And in general, it's possible to say that during these 20 years, productivity in agricultural sector in different sectors is now it's higher twice even and more than twice, 4 times, depending on the sector. So we can go to the next slide. It's the example of how the support can change the view of rural areas in general, just what it was before and what is now. Okay, and the most important topic, so it's the budget. Yes, this slide is showing the view, general view of e-part. It's like now it's paid a little bit more than 1 billion euro. And of course, for these 5 countries who is in the process of joining EU. And of course, the highest question would be how much Ukraine will get. And it depends, of course, on your negotiation process, but it should be concerning, according to your situation, billions of euro, I believe. But of course, it depends on all negotiation process. Yes, and we can go to the next slide. Just it is showing with you what we had in Lithuania in 2004 before joining the European Union. So MOR, it's Ministry of Agriculture. It was created, separated Department of Integration to European Union and also Department specialized of Rural Development. NPR, National Paying Agency. So it was 2 main departments for the administration of the support and 7 departments supporting these 2 departments. Data center of agricultural data. So it works like registers and information systems in the field of agricultural regulation and databases for the administration of the support. Food Agency, so it's created for agricultural and food market regulation. Provision and foreign trade and methodological assistance to economic entities. And of course, service, state food and veterinary service. It's for state food and veterinary control, and also supervision and control of farm animal breeding. So in short, it would be everything what I wanted to say now. And of course, I'm waiting for questions. So no questions from your side?
Next slide. Jonas, do you see next slide?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, yes, I now can see. Okay, just wanted to say the last slide about support programs for Lithuania under this common agricultural policy. Now, during these 24 years, because support started in 2000, so it's now paid in total 12 billion euros. And in support, so special accession program for agricultural and rural development, it was paid 167 million euros in total. After that, it was a single programming document for 2004 and 2006. And during that time, it was paid almost 200 million euros. After that, of course, then together it was Rural Development Plan for 2004 and 2006. It was two documents in one period. And it was paid almost 700 million euros. After that was 2007-2014, and it was paid more than 2.3 billion euros. And during 2014-2022, now it's paid 2.1 billion euros. And of course, the separate thing is direct payments, and at all now is during all the time it's paid 6.5 billion euros. And of course, do not forget that Lithuania has only 3 million citizens, so it's the budget for a quite small country. Just I am showing what to understand and what to expect, but even that's our small country has got this support from European Union. So, and yes, now it's really all what I wanted to say.
If I understand correct, it's finished of your presentation, yeah?
Yes, it's finished.
Thank you very much. Хочу звернутися до наших слухачів, власне, до тих, хто зараз є в Zoom, до тих, хто є в студії.
Thank you, and I would now like to invite our listeners, our viewers who are listening or watching us online. Maybe they have some questions.
Import funds. Do the negotiations about accession to you need to start? Is that a precondition, or as Ukraine already received the candidate status, that's enough to access IPART funds? What needs to be done to access those? Thank you.
Okay, just I would like to make sure the question you would like to know, is it necessary to start now negotiation in this stadium what you have now, yeah?
Is the candidate status that Ukraine has now already enough, or is the criteria negotiations have started on joining the EU to necessary criteria to access the funds? Because the countries you listed, Turkey, Serbia, their negotiations on joining in the EU have started. We just have the candidate status. Does the candidate status allow us to access the IPART funds, or do we have to wait for the negotiations start to access those?
Yeah, it's a quite difficult question because your situation is really different from other countries. So in your point, I would say just it's necessary even to ask somebody from European Commission this question, because we know all that really war situation and so on. So maybe it can be a little bit different what was for example, for Lithuania, because we had other situation like you have, of course. So in short, I can't say answer for you directly, and I believe it's necessary just to ask European Commission, somebody from European Commission.
Пане Олександр Гайду на зв'язку з нами ще?
Так, я на
Mr. Gaida, are you still with us? Are you connected? Yes. Yes, I wanted to ask my question as a follow-up to the previous question. In your view, how long would it take, given, for instance, the martial law now in Ukraine, for Ukraine to accede to the European Union? What's your view on how this harmonization of the legislation of Ukraine, how quickly would it, or how long would it take for Ukraine to cover, so to say, this road to accession to the European Union? Jonas, the floor is yours.
I believe that everything is possible to make it till 2027. But everything depends on both sides. For Lithuania, it took more than 4 years. For Lithuania, yes. But like I told before, we are in really different situations. What we were and what you are.
Зрозуміло, дякую за відповідь.
Thank you. Please stay with us. Maybe will be questions from our other participant. But right now I invite Tom Jones with presentation and speech about rural development. Of course, in context of common agricultural policy.
Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much for the privilege, as Jonas also mentioned, for being invited to this conference. I feel very, very proud, and I've been saying to my farming colleagues and neighbors about this event today and how important it is. So I'm very, very grateful to you. So Dobry Deri, I hope that sounds vaguely Ukrainian. I'm very grateful, as I say, for the invitation. Two things about myself and Erka. One is that I'm a farmer, still farming in Wales, in the UK, and have been the beneficiary of European funds from the Common Agricultural Policy for some 40 years altogether, and have been involved in designing the agri-environment schemes, etc. So I've benefited a great deal from being a farming member of the European community. Secondly, I'm speaking today as president of the European Rural Community Alliance, as you referred to, and it was again a privilege to be asked by Ivan and the organizations that you represent to become members of the European Rural Community Alliance. The European Rural Community Alliance is a platform and a support group for primarily voluntary and local organizations in some 14 European, EU and non-EU countries to make sure that the voices of community organizations in those countries are heard in Brussels and at a European level. So we have member organizations going from Portugal to Ireland to Scotland, England, Iceland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Lithuania, as it happens, and Germany. So we have quite a range of member organizations, and we are involved on a regular basis in meetings with the European Commission. We are also jointly involved in the European Rural Parliament, which again provides a voice for local, community and regional organizations at a European level. We met recently in Poland, and that's where I met Ivan, and we tried to draw up a manifesto of wishes and concerns to present to the European institutions. So that's the background that I'm speaking on. but the topic today is obviously rural development, and Jonas has explained in far more detail than myself the complications of the common agricultural policies. So for the benefit of interpretation, I will just read out now my own presentation, and hopefully you can follow that. During the last decade or two, the European Union, primarily through its Commission policies, has recommitted to preventing its rural areas, with its population of some 100 million people, from declining into abandonment, environmental degradation, the loss of young people, the loss of public basic services, and low economic and social well-being. The long-established common agricultural policy was intended to ensure a continuity of food production and supply at affordable prices as Europe recovered from widespread warfare. A historical commitment and an example that may be of real relevance to the Ukraine of today and your immediate future. The European Union's common agricultural policy, delivered through working and co-financing with member states, had its strengths and weaknesses. It provided subsidies, grants, skills training, research and business advice, primarily to farmers and food processors, and some market support. But it still failed to halt depopulation and economic vulnerability. In recent years, although the CAP budget is decreasing in real terms, currently at around 32% of the EU's total budget, its remit has widened to recognise that if rural areas are to survive and revitalise, then a more holistic approach is needed. Recognition and real support is now given to the wider rural economy to provide greater employment opportunities, especially for young people. The greening of the common agricultural policy is extremely important in ensuring rural Europe contributes to mitigating climate change, to increase carbon capture from forestry and grassland, and in harnessing the natural assets for renewable energy. However, the two pillars of the common agricultural policy in this current and hopefully the next programming periods are more rainbow than green, in that they have a social dimension which acknowledges the wider challenge of more farm diversification, more links from farm to fork, more health and cultural tourism, more use of technology, enabling new and old rural to work from home and learn to live together. The concept of care farms and smart villages are examples of how to recognise that there is hidden poverty and health disadvantages in rural areas which are not well addressed and resourced, because public funding is often allocated on a population number basis, which works against the needs of sparsely populated areas. No one should be left behind, says Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission. The concept of local people participating in and even owning decision-making when creating solutions to local challenges is increasingly appreciated, as demonstrated by the LEADER programme, the local action groups, and principles of community-led local development, bringing individual businesses, entrepreneurs, public, governmental bodies, and social enterprises together, as in the EU's Smart Rural and Startup Village initiatives. Farming of land and water for food production is still an absolute necessity. But the other roles of land use are also very important and offer other employment opportunities given proper leadership at all levels. That is why there has been a general welcome for the European Commission's recent long-term vision for Europe's rural areas, with targets for more resilience and prosperity by the year 2040, and a clear action plan to be realised within specific imminent dates. The current CAP includes more flexibility for Member States to design their own priorities within an overall EU framework, and it will be important to ensure that this greater flexibility adds territorial and local value while still endorsing the integrity of the European Union. This long-term vision demonstrates that supporting rural areas through the CAP and the wider regional policy is not sufficient. The whole Commission commits to rural proofing of other spending departments so that resources are more widely dispersed, recognising the special disadvantage of remote and dispersed populations and the need for specific rural solutions. This extra commitment by the Commission should ensure that the rural development budget of €95 billion in the 2021 to 27 period through the second pillar from the EFRD, the European Agricultural Fund, will be supported and more effectively by the ERDF, the European Regional Development Fund, the ESF, the European Social Fund, the Horizon Research Fund, and others. The positive commitment to rural proofing and a more joined-up approach to rural development has to be delivered and demonstrated transparently through mid-term reviews. There is certainly some grounds for optimism that a better, prosperous future is possible for our rural communities if we all work together. The Commission is building its consultation dialogue with civil society organisations in a formal, more transparent way so that it has a better understanding of changing local and regional needs. And through its support for the Pact and a rural observatory, it commits to partnership working, to more equitable rural-urban relationships, supported and underpinned by specific rural research. Ukraine's many rural, municipal and other civil society organisations need to engage deeply with similar well-established equivalents, both within and alongside the EU, to maximise potential benefits when more favourable peaceful conditions prevail. That is why I was delighted to accept the All-Ukrainian Association of Communities as a member of ERCA. The European Rural Community Alliance, of which I am currently president, we can learn much from each other. This European Commission's rural vision provides a way ahead, and its action plan from the centre will have to be replicated by the member states if a real difference is to be achieved. That is why it is so important for civil society organisations to inform, to campaign and monitor together how this vision is shared and delivered. That is also why the European Rural Parliament needs the inclusive support and commitment of rural organisations across the wider Europe. And that is why I, as President of ERCA, need your help to much better understand the jigsaw of Ukrainian rural communities so that we can purposefully share good practice and learn from each other about what works and what doesn't. The EU's Rural Development Programme and the Cohesion Funds, as well as Horizon Research, do recognise that one size does not fit all, and that policies have to be varied to suit different rural problems and ambitions. All citizens, rural and urban, need to understand their interdependence, how food production and consumption, the importance of short supply chains, and environmental protection are intertwined, and how we all need to respect rights and responsibilities. All Ukrainians shall live smutve vizia Ukrainia. Meanwhile, simplifying the bureaucratic process for compliance and regulation is a perennial challenge for us all, and there will be a need for yourselves and government to build human capacity support and engage intermediaries to avoid delays and frustration, especially for small businesses and communities seeking to access funds to make a difference. I hope that I and my European colleagues will be able to support you in your desire to create a rural Ukraine that will be vibrant economically, will be sustainable and socially inclusive, and above all else, peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question to Jonas. We can start our discussion. We have half an hour because in this building will be next event. I have a question to Jonas. Задам українською, щоб чули нас глядачі. Йонас, скажіть, будь ласка, у вашому випадку, і до Тома Джонса також це адресую питання, із практики країн-кандидатів, якщо ви знаєте, звісно, в першу чергу Литви, які інституції...
Jonas, given the experience and practices in Lithuania, what institutions were changed and what other institutional steps were taken so that Lithuania's accession process was facilitated? And again, what funds were Lithuania given access to before the formalization, before the completion of the process of accession? Maybe if you are aware of the practices of the other countries in this respect.
In the middle, just would like to repeat a little bit because I heard only the part of translation.
Яку домашню роботу?
What was the homework, so to say, was needed to be done in Lithuania, or maybe you are aware of the examples of the other countries, specifically what amendments to the statutory instruments, or maybe drafting of the new ones, were necessary for Lithuania to get access to the EU funds before the completion of the process of accession. What was the experience and practices with regard to Lithuania specifically?
Maybe first of all with rights of human association. I mean that in general with human rights, because we had the death penalty in our country. And some other really important topics what was forbidden in the European Union, and it was necessary to change. So it's first part, human rights. The second really high challenge was the closing the nuclear plant in Lithuania. Because we had one and we had to close it. So it was really long process talking about that. what was related with agriculture, it was really more easier to implement. Because it was necessary to create a special data center, a special agency for administration of support, and of course to create special divisions in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Can I just add a comment
Of
to
course.
that?
Of course.
Thank you. I think it's important that civil society organizations in the Ukraine and those organizations representing farmers and producers build up their capacity in advance, because the money that might come to the Ukraine, let's say in 2027 or in what other year, it cannot just be thrown out to people. It has to go through managed processes. There has to be financial accounting capacity within organizations. And what I found is that some larger organizations can help the smaller organizations to make sure that they are constitutionally able to draw down funds from the European Commission and from their national governments and account for how they spend them. So there has to be some clear development at the local and regional level of those who would benefit from these funds, so that they can from day one actually apply for funds and then use those funds to make a real difference in their communities.
Yes, and just adding more, it was really a high challenge to adopt all the EU regulation and directives to Lithuanian national acts. So what was related with general legal acts and also with legal acts related with agriculture.
Окей, з колег, що у нас на Zoom, також ті, хто
Dear colleagues, those who are watching or listening us online, maybe you would like to ask a question or react somehow, express your comment or observation or something, or rather. The question to you, Jonas, were there any issues with the land property rights? For instance, with regard to the foreigners, there was some information that allegedly a lot of people from neighboring countries, including Russian Federation, they bought a lot of land in Lithuania. So were there any issues of that sort?
Yeah. Anyway, distance between Lithuania and Ukraine is quite high, like between wells also. And yes, we had and we still have the law which forbidden to buy land for a physical person from abroad in Lithuania. But the land can be bought by the legal entity established in Lithuania, but there is no restriction who can be the owner of that legal entity. So it means that yes, like the Russian person can, for example, be the owner of the legal entity, and that legal entity can try to buy the land. But now the country adopted quite many changes in the legal acts, and now to buy the land is quite difficult for that entity which is owned by any person from Russia or Belarus.
If I could add as well, the Commission obviously has been criticised in the past in having policies that favour the larger farmers, and it is always trying to find a definition of who it can support in agriculture, and that may change over the coming years, but it's looking at a definition that if you are to be in receipt of support from the Common Agricultural Policy, you should be a working farmer. And there is the possibility also for a ceiling on the amount of funds that go to a single farm. So the Commission does recognise that the CAP has a social dimension. We don't want to be supporting very, very large farms, but with very, very few people living and working on those farms. Otherwise, that just adds to the depopulation of rural areas. So the Commission, through its social dimension, is looking at different ways of actually supporting family farms and farmers who are actually working the land and not absentee landlords.
Yes, and to add more information, what is related with support in Lithuania, it is no such a possibility to get support if you are in a restricted list of European Union. It is not allowed you to get that support. And also, like there are many equipments what is coming from Russia and Belarus, what is made by the Russia and Belarus. So it's forbidden to give the support for these equipments also, because some of them are resold in other companies which work in European Union, and they sell it with all certificates. But anyway, now it's forbidden to pay the support for these equipments which are made in Russia and Belarus, in Lithuania.
Дуже дякую. А в мене, по-перше, я хотів би звернути.
Thank you. I wanted also to ask our viewers and listeners to maybe sign in to this channel. We are going to have our own channel, and our today's event is the first one in a series of similar meetings and discussions that are going to be focused on the common agricultural policy of the European Union and and Ukraine's agricultural policies approximation with the CAP, so that Ukrainian agricultural policies will be better suited or better aligned with the agricultural policies of the European Union. My question to Jonas is whether we have correct understanding of a farmer in the European Union is understood to be an entity that processes, cultivates more than 1 hectare of land. And are there any limitations in terms of the property rights? For instance, we have now in Ukraine a bill that might eliminate the currently existing agricultural code and introduce only one notion, one definition of an agricultural enterprise, which can be only an open joint stock company. And I can also use this opportunity to ask this question, to address this question to Oleksandr. So for us, it is very important to understand what are the organizational and legal forms that determine the notion, the definition of a farmer. Does it depend on the number of on circulation capital, circulating capital used by that farm, or the number of people employed by the farm, or an amount of land that is owned by a farm? So, what are these criteria that determine the status of a farmer? What is needed for one to be considered a farmer under the EU legislation?
In Lithuania, we have now about 200 different support measures, and maybe 40 of them were a definition of the farmer. Yes, and to understand that really clear and really detailed, first of all, definition of farmer is in the law of Lithuania of farmer. It is description, and like for internal and just general purposes. But the definition of farmer for support has the difference between this definition what we have in legal act. And of course, when you would like to get the support, you must apply all the conditions. And in the most popular measures of support, like for example, we have setting up of young farmers, it is necessary to have the land, to have the holding, and to have registered farm. Also to have the necessary professional education even. So when you have all these criteria, then you can apply of support. But also it's necessary in the beginning to have land, but you can have it rented or to have it by your own. So you can be the owner or just the renter. But anyway, when you get the support, you're necessary to implement the intentions and your plans. And you have to make your agricultural activity and get the incomes and be economically viability also. And you are checked all the time in 3 years period, all the time. And in other measures, for example, like modernization of agricultural holdings, because it's measured for farmers who have now the experience in farming. So it means that this farmer and the holding must be registered not less than 2 years, and have to have special economic size of the farm, which is described in units. It's really complicated system to explain, but in general, if you would like to have the support, you must be acting farmer. And it means that you must be registered and you must be acting, and also you have to got the incomes from agricultural activity. And from that agricultural activity, from all your farm incomes, it must be not less than 50% of all incomes.
And if I can add to Jonas, again, that's a very, very good explanation. But also there is some difference between different member states in terms of eligibility. What I was going to say was, once you've become accepted as a farmer who can receive these supports, there is this word or two words, cross-compliance, that you can lose that right to receive support if you do not comply with several different rules. All your land has to be registered very clearly defined by its topography. Is it lowland? Is it mountain land? Is it forestry land? Does it have monuments on the land? And if you actually deliberately deface those features, then you would lose. Well, first of all, you'd probably face a penalty, or because you failed to protect biodiversity, or you failed to protect the heritage of your land, and you could then lose or be penalized, certainly, from receiving all your payments. So it's one thing to become recognized as a legal farmer who can receive support. You have to then constantly maintain a record of how you look after your animals, if you're farming animals, and how you're looking after the environment, and can be inspected by European officials delegating to national authorities. So there's quite a lot of record keeping and general management for this to happen. But again, it's all in the interest of this fact that taxpayers across Europe are supporting through this policy their farmers. So we have a duty to obviously to respect our landscape and our consumers.
Yes, and adding more information, anyway, the definition of farmer depends on your program which you will prepare like the country, and this definition would be approved by European Commission. So that means that that definition can be created by the country by itself. So from you depends on what that definition would be, and you can create it by yourself, specially created for the support. I mean, for example, if you have in your internal legal acts already the definition of farmer, you can adopt another one for the support, which would be in general program for the support of Ukraine. For example, in Lithuania experience, now we have like the 5th programming period, and all the time that definition of farmer was changing depending on the situation. So I believe that Ukraine just will have possibility to create the definition of a farmer and beneficiary by itself, according to your needs.
Дякую. Колеги, я хочу запросити наших учасників дискусії в студії.
Thank you, colleagues. Let me invite some of our participants to our panel. Those who are watching us via Zoom, maybe you have some questions that you would like to ask now. Mr. Andriy Deretinchuk, for instance, has adopted a rather unusual, I'd say, approach to rural development in his community, the cluster development. We can define it like this, or describe it like this. And within the framework of a political dialogue, there was even a visit organized to the European Union, and there were meetings with the farmers, with the officials of the EU, agricultural officials, and so on. So it would be interesting to listen to your opinion. What do you see as the definition of farmer and your general vision of agricultural policy? Let's start with Ms. Maria. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really delightful that these discussions have been initiated. We are going to develop them. agricultural policies and approximation of Ukraine's agricultural policy with that of the EU is relatively yet little known in Ukraine. So under the framework of this political dialogue, or rather agro-political dialogue between Germany and Ukraine, we have started making some first steps in order to, first of all, develop the competencies of agricultural enterprises. A lot of information that I've heard was interesting. To me, it was very useful to see how our colleagues and our partners understand their agricultural policies. When we are talking about the common agricultural policies of the European Union, we are usually talking about some specific periods of time. So there is now, for instance, another period underway. But we should understand also that for the European Union to be able to adopt this common agricultural policy at all, it took a lot. It had taken a lot of time before that policy was adopted as common agricultural policy of the European Union as organization. And so for Ukraine, it's also important to understand all these stages of this process of approximation. And I can say right away that Ukraine would hardly follow the same principles in the process of accession that were followed by a number of other countries. As was already mentioned, a number of countries have already expressed their concerns, if you will, with regard to Ukraine's accession to the European common market, because they are aware that Ukraine is a large agricultural producer, and its accession could certainly change dramatically the situation in the agricultural market of the European Union. So my view is that we need to get ready for a lengthy dialogue with the participation of both the Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine and trade associations and rural communities and so on, and also raise the awareness of the Ukrainian public, because they are relatively very little aware of these processes of approximation, and we need to proceed in this process with the understanding that Ukraine used to be, this part of the world used to be a breadbasket of Europe, at least, if not of the whole world. And Ukraine is bigger than just one typical EU agricultural producer. And also, we need to also clarify for our own farmers this strange notion that was somehow introduced into their minds, that in the European Union all the farmers are getting financial assistance just for nothing, just for owning the land, just for living in the rural areas. I don't know who was, what was the source of that information that was spread in the last years among many of Ukrainian farmers, but this misconception, this misunderstanding should be clarified, that nobody is disbursing money for nothing in the European Union to the farmers just because they are farmers. And also here, what is important, I think, are local initiatives of rural development, the leader approach. Here in Ukraine, we have all the necessary conditions for rural development. We need only, the activists, the leaders for rural development. I would also like to say a few words about the role of the communities in the development of agribusinesses.
Означає інтеграція, як залучити інвестиції.
Here, the explanations of what is the agricultural policy, what are the prospects for agribusiness development needs to be better explained. So this is an important niche, so to say, and I see a great role for local communities here, and I see here also a great role for our organization of Germany-Ukraine agro-political dialogue. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that you will continue our cooperation with us, even in this information and awareness raising sphere, because when we speak about the concerns about Ukraine's accession to the common market of the European Union, we even saw that when we visited DG Agri, the General Department of Agriculture of the European Commission, we have heard a number of concerns about that prospect. So we hope that Germany might somehow facilitate, if not to become an ambassador of
Є, власне, наявність німецького агрополітичного діалогу.
of Ukraine's accession, and therefore we view the Germany-Ukraine agro-political dialogue's role as an important role in this process. Yes, indeed, we are going to continue our efforts in Brussels, bringing the leaders and the managers and the owners of agricultural enterprises to Ukraine, and of leaders of our trade associations, so that the role of Ukraine could be better described to the European actors and better understood by them. As of now, Ukraine is only known, or mostly known in Europe as a country where there are hostilities underway. If we raise awareness also in Europe about our country, it will also facilitate the accession process for Ukraine. We only have we have also a number of people who are our participants online. I would like to start by saying that we have a number of people who already have this philosophy, so to say, of cluster development. So please say a few words about the practices of Yasenyanska community. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to take part in this important forum. A number of ideas about rural development. Our community is one of the mountain highland, I dare say, communities located in the highest part of the Carpathians as compared to the other areas of our country. In my view, these highland areas and mountainous areas should get more attention in terms of their needs, in terms of the needs of their rural communities. We have very little land, arable land. We cannot, grow grain, for instance, grain crops. But we have a lot of problems like floods, seasonal, climate changes that are quite acutely felt in mountainous areas. Certainly, as of today, rural areas deserve much more attention and assistance. A number of members of the Verkhovna Rada have already pointed out that there is a number of legislative problems that need to be tackled. For instance, the law on the status of mountainous areas that, in my view, is totally impracticable as of today. It's obsolete. It should be improved, amended, and modernized. But most importantly, this implementation of this law should be backed up by some funds, by financing, which is lacking at the moment, as well as the other strategies of various aspects of rural development. All these strategies remain without any funds for their practical implementation. We certainly understand the difficulties of this period of time, of this moment in time in our country, but still, it's not a new problem. Mountainous areas were supposed to be developed yet before the outbreak of hostilities, which have lasted for the last year. And we have a number of very attractive things in our territory, of our community, that might facilitate tourism and the other aspects that might be quite lucrative, and the restoration, revival even, of some of the branches of agriculture. For instance, if you look into the cabinet of ministers list of professions that are indicated for social assistance, this list exists for the purposes of pension payments and social assistance. You will not find there cattle breeder as a profession at all. Even it's not even mentioned there. So it's lost, and these are things that we need to speak about and to draw attention of the government to. The problem of the development of mountainous areas, rural areas especially, is that for a number of assistance, financial assistance to the farmers, the mountainous areas are not included into these programs. For instance, if we have this greenhouse development program, some other, like for instance, in the Carpathian Mountains, for instance, the breeding of sheep was very popular. It had been for centuries before a very recent period of time when it was diminished significantly. Geographic denomination, for instance, was given some years ago to some of the areas, specifically in the Carpathian Mountains. For instance, we we the cheese, sheep cheese, which we called with the Caucasian word brinza, but produced that sort produced in the Carpathian was so popular that it was given the special geographical denomination. And we have been enjoying strong assistance from the USAID. Together with the Kosiv community, we were the first two communities that started receiving assistance from USAID Agro. I also would like to thank FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, that also opened a program for small farmers who have beehives or at least a small number of sheep. I'm sorry, there is a air raid siren signal, and please follow the rules of what you need to do, what one needs to do in order to react to the air raid siren. So the important aspect that I wanted to point out is that it's difficult for mountainous areas, communities to compete with other agriculturally strong communities located on good lands in a valley or somewhere where the conditions are much easier for agricultural activities.
Цікавий кейс, як хотів.
So it's very advantageous to these communities to develop crafts.
На сьогодні вже знаменитим майже на весь світ, так, і це от дозволяє, якщо раніше фермери, наші виробники продавали з однією ціною, так, то сьогодні, маючи географічне зазначення, маючи цей поважний знак, ми конкуруємо з тим, що ця продукція має набагато більшу ціну, і власникам стає вигідніше тримати поголів'я овець для того, щоб реалізовувати цю продукцію вже за завищеною ціною. А також у нас на території Снянської громади є крафтові виробники, які саме спеціалізуються на виробництві малій якості, але крафтової екологічно чистої продукції. Це як бринза, це так як і сири з коров'ячого молока, також мед з наших карпатських бджіл, так, унікальних. Тому дуже буде доцільно, якщо буде підтримка саме таких крафтових виробників, щоб ми Карпати теж приймали участь в продовольчій безпеці України, теж розвивались і конкурували на ринку своєю продукцією. Дякую.
Я думаю, що можливо треба просто нам зробити відеоогляд, як функціонує, тому що у вас є санаторії, у вас є наливки цікаві, пиво місцеве робиться, багато чого, і я так думаю, що навіть просто не встигнемо за цей захід це розповісти.
Тут є пропозиція приїхати в Ясеня і все це посмакувати і побачити на власні очі. Тож запрошую.
Колеги, я пропоную рухатися поступово до завершення. Я пропоную зараз надати слово Миколі Різнику, голові Опішнянської громади, пані Оксані Кравченко, заступниці Узинської громади, де я проживаю, власне кажучи, теж в селі Олійникова Слобода. І потім, я бачу, є піднята рука Григорій Шамрицький, Конгрес фермерів, і, можливо, тоді будемо підсумовувати, якщо не буде там інших питань. Власне, я підведу до пана Миколи. У нас було зібрання нашого обласного осередку в Опішні, і, чесно кажучи, я був під враженням, по-перше, гастрономічним, оскільки, власне, в цій громаді вдалося відродити рецепти кухні за творами Енеїди. Наприклад, я вперше дізнався, що таке качана каша, тому що завжди думаю, що Полтавщина – це тільки галушки і вареники, але набагато там більше було дуже цікавих речей. Вже не говорю про ту варенуху, до речі, дякую за ту передачу, я не встиг віддзвонитися. Взагалі унікальна річ, це уварений дистилят, в простонароді самогон в печі, на ягодах, неймовірні речі. І це все навколо туристичного магніту, хутору з подіями і так далі. І також різними видами бізнесу, які теж пан Микола притягує як магніт в свою громаду. Пане Миколо, будь ласка, якщо можна, ваші успішні практики, ваше розуміння, ваше бачення, але максимально лаконічно, якщо можна.
Доброго дня, колеги. Я дуже коротко, дуже цікавий форум. От те, про що ви сказали, крафт разом з виробництвом, мені дуже сподобалося, так як це роблять в Польщі. Якщо ти щось вирощуєш на своїй землі, ще відкриваєш невеличкий готель і робиш крафтову продукцію, там це заохочується податковими інструментами і тим іншим. У нас в Україні поки що цього нема. Те, про що говорили сьогодні весь форум, у нас є конкретні кейси, те, що не назвали, наприклад, ми запустили теплиці. Створили перше в Україні комунальне підприємство. В чому суть? Ми хочемо сільські території, так як сьогодні говорили, не в кожного фермера є 1000 гектар, 2-3, але в кожної людини в Україні є там 10, 15, 20 сотих. І вирощування на цій землі в закритому ґрунті – це набагато вигідніше. Тому ми от в минулому році запустили першу теплицю, незважаючи на війну, незважаючи на те, що там все закривається. Цей кейс успішний, ми вирощували зелень. Там цибуля, укроп, петрушка, все інше. І ви знаєте, зазвичай говорять, виростити не так важко, важко збути. Виявилося, якщо розробити бренд громади, ми клеїмо наклеєчку на цю цибулю, там Опішнянська громада, то ми просто її не встигали вирощувати, тому що такий спрос був. Ми заключили договір із великою всеукраїнською мережею, і ми просто її здавали, і на наступну зелень у нас стояла черга. Чому кажу стояла? Тому що зараз ми вже зібрали весь урожай, зараз посадили вже в закритому ґрунті огірки. Я думаю, на них вже так само буде стояти черга, тому що це екологічно чисто. Але в чому суть? От зараз були багато грантів, до мене багато колег з інших громад, з усієї України приїжджали, дивилися на цей кейс, навіть там обласні центри, і вони подали на гранти саме теплиці. От взяли, в нас все скопіювали, подали, і майже всі виграли. А ми подали вже не теплиці, а наступний крок – це там зберігання, нам потрібні склади, потрібне там охолодження, то ми не виграли, тому що, я не знаю, чи люблять картинку, чи ще щось. Тому ми зараз розробляємо проєкт уже на більше теплиць, на зберігання і не все інше, але це такий кейс для розвитку сільської території, коли ми говоримо там залишити молодь, коли я привожу 11-класників в цю теплицю і кажу, дивіться, оце ви можете купити там за 20 тисяч гривень тонну цибулі, за місяць ви можете заробити 100 тисяч гривень, і вони роблять такі квадратні очі, а що так можна, це не треба їхати кудись за кордон. І от якщо говорити про іноземних партнерів, нам би хотілося дізнатись потребу. Да, дійсно бояться, що ми там зараз завалимо дешевими товарами, там пшеницю чи ще щось. Але є дуже багато нішевих культур. Я там вивчав, наприклад, якщо Польща там експортує в Германію молоко, там, яблука і так далі. А от сливи, слив не так багато. Так, можливо, ми займемо ті ніші, які не закриті, які там більш складні, там, чи рукола якась, чи ще щось. От ми не бідні родственники, да? Ми не бідні родичі, дадуть щось допомогу, дадуть, не дадуть, ми самі витягнемо. Кризовому менеджменту ми можемо багатьох європейців зараз навчити, як в таких умовах щось відкривати, щось робити. Але ми б хотіли, наприклад, щоб нас направили, чи це потрібна цибуля, чи це горіхи, чи це якісь там ягоди, яких нема, а такі ніші точно є, тільки ми про них не знаємо. Тому, в принципі, давайте не боятися робити, починати майбутнє тільки за сільським розвитком, бо їсти будуть хотіти завжди. Дякую.
Дуже дякую, удачі вам у ваших починаннях. Пані Оксана, є що вам висловитися, якісь думки, рефлексії, можливо? Пані Оксана.
Доброго дня всім. Дуже вдячні за можливість долучитися до справді важливого заходу. Окрім усіх інших видів підтримки, які на сьогоднішній день потребує і контекст сільського розвитку, і аграрний бізнес на селі, то, звичайно, важлива дуже і просвітницька саме робота. І я підтримую попереднього спікера в тому, що дуже важливо, що ми долучаємося дуже оперативно до тієї інформації, яку можна використати, і оперативно попрацювати на неї, не чекати, поки дійсно буде манна з неба падати. Узенська громада стала пілотним проєктом в агрополітичному діалозі, і якраз саме завдяки...
Я прошу вибачення, одну секундочку. А перекладач у нас закінчив роботу? Да. Що? Я зрозумів. I must say for Jonas and Tom, unfortunately, entrepreneur afraid of alarm and go upstairs, and we stay here without translation. I'm very sorry. Продовжуйте, будь ласка.
Так от, саме участь у цьому пілотному проєкті нашої громади дозволила нам ближче познайомитися з цікавою німецькою практикою, де невеличкі фермерські господарства дуже відкриті для поціновувачів зеленого туризму. Тому що поняття зеленого туризму в Україні набуває своїх обертів, але фермерські господарства до цього менш, скажімо так, принаймні на нашій території, менш дійсно були дотичні. Тому поспілкувалися з певними фермерами, вже проводиться певна така робота, дискусія з цього питання, і деякі з них виявляють бажання і саме готові відкривати свої господарства, зокрема і саме в галузі садівництва, того ж самого рибальства, і долучатися до розвитку, зокрема сільського туризму на території тих регіонів, тих територій сільських, де вони працюють і де дійсно долучаються до розвитку в контексті і, звичайно, що ж громади. А щодо України, то дійсно, як говорила пані Марія, в нас країна дуже багата, дуже унікальна в тому, що особливості, звичайно, Карпатського регіону, вони потребують свого бачення, свого вирішення. Особливості, скажімо, півдня, вони полягають в іншому. І тому до кожного регіону тут має бути свій підхід, і в кожного регіону є свої потреби. Я впевнена, що Україна буде в Європейському Союзі. Дійсно підтримую, знову ж таки, попередника свого в тому, що ми не бідні родичі, ми маємо з чим іти, але нам є багато чому вчитися, і дійсно дякуємо таким ініціативам за можливість опановувати ті знання, які можемо застосувати для того, щоб розвивати і громаду, і наші сільські території.
Дуже дякую. А я, користуючись нагодою, проанонсую те, що у нас найближчим часом відбудеться, і хочу запропонувати пані Оксані. Справа в тому, що у нас зараз відбудеться отримання від компанії Bayer насіння моркви для домогосподарств. На всю Україну це буде порядка 25 тисяч чи 50 тисяч отримувачів. І я думаю, що ми могли б, наприклад, в Узинській громаді, і також в інших громадах, перш за все, там члени правління і пілотних громадах, ті, хто виявить бажання, наприклад, спробувати щось на зразок міні-кооперації, наприклад. Тобто це буде однотипне насіння, наприклад, ми можемо обрати в кожному селі там по 10, по 20 чоловік, наприклад, або одне село взяти, наприклад, і спробувати там спільно виростити і там, взявши досвід тої самої опішні, спробувати це реалізувати. Або принаймні продовольчу безпеку забезпечити громади, тобто морквою точно можна буде забезпечити. Тому зв'яжемо...
Ініціатива, хвилиночку ще уваги. У нас був такий невеличкий досвід в цьому контексті в плані вирощування картоплі. Дуже успішно, дуже корисно і дуже потрібно. Особливо, якщо розглядати ще варіант кількості великої внутрішньопереміщених осіб на нашій території, то це нам надало можливість і допомогу людям надати, і трошечки виручити кошти. Тому будемо вдячні за і таку ініціативу, і можливість долучитися до проєкту.
Дякую. Була рука піднята Конгрес фермерів Григорій Шамрицький, будь ласка.
Доброго дня, друзі, колеги. Чутно мене, Іван Леонідович?
Так.
Дякую за запрошення і взагалі за можливість бути присутнім на таких заходах. І дуже важливо, що ви їх організовуєте, адже громади і фермери мають не просто співпрацювати, а фінансові спроможності громади, наповнення бюджетів у громадах будуть прямо залежати від того, наскільки багато буде фермерів в Україні, наскільки вони будуть багатими. Тому дякую вам, що є у нас громадська організація Всеукраїнський конгрес фермерів, членом якої я є і очолюю конгрес фермерів на Полтавщині з офісом у місті Лохвиця. Адже Конгрес фермерів, Всеукраїнський конгрес фермерів на сьогодні чи не єдина громадська організація в Україні, яка насправді є європейською і відстоює інтереси усіх фермерів, не дивлячись від форми господарювання, як це нещодавно попередніми колегами обговорювалося. Від сімейного фермерського господарства, де там 5, 10 чи 20 гектарів, до фермерської думку на наступні роки, на наступні десятки років у розвитку взагалі фермерства і сільського господарства в країні має бути спрямування всіх можливих коштів на переробку і на тваринництво. Ми зрозуміли, зокрема, в цей воєнний період, ми зрозуміли, побачили ці всі проблеми з логістикою, проблеми із неможливістю збути продукцію свою, проблеми із цінами на продукцію. Тому, дякуючи тому, що на сьогодні є ці грантові програми по переробці, але до них потрібно однозначно вносити зміни, робити їх без умов співфінансування. Я розумію, що співфінансування – це добре, коли це 50 на 50%, коли це критерії по створенню робочих місць. Але потрібно зробити мінімальну кількість критеріїв із максимальним доступом аграріїв різного об'єму до цих програм. І взагалі всі кошти по можливості спрямовувати на переробку, на створення доданої вартості і на тваринництво. Це основні акценти, які мають бути у нас у сільському господарстві. Таким шляхом ми піднімемо економіку просто в рази. А ми є сільськогосподарська країна. І тут прямо пропорційно залежить розвиток наших громад і наповнення бюджетів в наших громадах. Тому дякую вам. Спільно напрацьовуємо ці механізми і спільно з Всеукраїнським конгресом фермерів готові надавати пропозиції щодо того, як ці програми мають бути доступні саме малому фермеру. По типу того, як це є на сьогодні в програмі «Дар», доступ до програм підтримки малого фермера. Коли ти заповнюєш форму і отримуєш доступ на рівних правах з іншими. По типу цього потрібно. Дуже дякую.
Дуже дякую. Колеги, будемо наближатися до завершення. Тоді останній виступ я запрошую Ігоря Степановича Абрамюка, який зараз займається напрямком розвитку Всеукраїнської асоціації громад. І особливо цікаво почути його думку в контексті тому, що раніше Ігор Степанович працював в Мінрегіоні, займався таким, один з його ключових проєктів був кращі практики місцевого самоврядування. І, власне кажучи, я знаю, як Ігор Степанович власне захоплюється саме сільськими практиками місцевого самоврядування. Ми тут є однозначними однодумцями. Тому, Ігор Степанович, будь ласка.
Про практики можна говорити довго, тому що це насправді невичерпна тема. І я дійсно, мене ці практики найбільше наснажували, коли я працював як експерт от саме конкурсу кращих практик. Я думаю, що ми будемо практикувати подібні конкурси. Я знаю, що і у проєкту АПД була подібна ініціатива. І зараз війна просто трішки перебила ці всі історії. Але я думаю, що ми до цього повернемося. І обов'язково треба збирати і поширювати найкращі кейси, найкращі практики тих громад, тих господарств, тих людей, які не чекають на остаточне якесь вирішення якихось там рамок, а роблять це не очікуючи, роблять це успішно. Я думаю, що у нас буде ще багато заходів, де ми зможемо про це поговорити. Зараз я хотів ще так буквально декількома словами означити нашу задачу, тому що ми говорили сьогодні про домашні завдання. Я розумію, що Всеукраїнська асоціація громад мусить також своє домашнє завдання виконувати і спонукати до виконання цього завдання з одного боку як державну владу, а з другого боку і громади. Тому питання стоїть так. Яке має бути українське село? З нашої подачі навіть у настановчий документ Альянсу з міст і регіонів з відбудови України зайшла така теза розвиток і модернізація українського села. Тобто воно має після війни бути іншим. Відповідно, має бути нова політика сільського розвитку. Є вона в нас чи немає? Поки що, певно, немає, тому що вона не закріплена у нормативно-правових актах, її треба визнати як сферу. Сільський розвиток треба визнати як сферу політики. Треба її віднести як сферу політики до відання одного з комітетів Верховної Ради, бо зараз вона не віднесена. Треба її віднести і чітко закріпити за міністерством і відповідно забезпечити координацію в уряді. І треба вчити громади тому, як рухатися до цієї політики, в тому числі до запровадження на рівні громад тих підходів, про які сьогодні говорили колеги. З іншого боку, треба зафіксувати цю політику в документах політики. Зараз ми маємо 5-сторінкову концепцію сільського розвитку, документ Кабінету міністрів. Що важливо, що в регламенті уряду написано, що концепція приймається на вирішення проблеми, не на розвиток сфери політики, а на вирішення якоїсь конкретної проблеми. Тобто на рівні Кабміну визнання сільського розвитку як політики також немає. У нас є частина державної стратегії регіонального розвитку, присвячена сільському розвитку. У нас є національна економічна стратегія до 30-го року, в якій є частина сільської політики. Оце треба все скоординувати, все звести докупи, накласти на це нові виклики і нові задачі, які є в нас в рамках євроінтеграції, в рамках тої біди, яка є в нас війни. І що саме цікаво, що ми маємо не тільки євроінтегровуватися, а, як казала пані Марія, напевно, нам треба спробувати вплинути на європейську сільську політику наступного циклу. Бо якраз ми тоді євроінтегруємося, і Україна має зробити, вплинути на те, щоб європейська сільська політика наступного циклу була доброю для України і доброю для Європи. Тобто нам є всім над чим працювати і на національному рівні, на рівні громад. Я думаю, що асоціація, цей захід такий зачин фактично, і я думаю, що ми маємо наступні кроки зробимо, і їх буде ще багато на цьому шляху. Дякую.
Більше того, дивіться, в нас взагалі цей захід планувався як форум органів місцевого самоврядування. Але оскільки вже існує організація такого форуму і вже вона там триває не перший рік, ми вирішили, що фактично це буде перший такий сільський форум, який ми будемо проводити щорічно. Тому що я думаю, що ці питання вони будуть тільки актуалізовуватись, ці питання завжди будуть важливі для нас, як для профільної асоціації, де в фокусі залишаються сільські території і Конгресу фермерів. Це однозначно буде важливе питання, власне, в такому контексті, як ми сьогодні це комунікуємо. Тому фактично закладаємо сьогодні перший такий камінчик до фундаменту і будемо це робити щороку. Колеги, у нас ще є на зв'язку Максим Кобзистий. Я не знаю, чи є бажання, це директор, начальник управління з Мінагрополітики, є Іван Паньків. Якщо є бажання ще щось можливо сказати чи відрефлексувати, але дуже прошу лаконічно, щоб ми вже могли завершити.
Доброго дня.
Вітаю вас.
Ви чуєте мене? Пане Іване, Марія, вітаю вас. Щиро буду короткий. Перше, мені приємно було чути від громад теж наголошення на те, що має бути все ж таки в Україні представницька система від села. І ми з вами були, Іване, в вересні в Польщі на сільському парламенті європейських країн. І ще раз наголошується, чи вірніше напрошується сьогодні створити таку організацію в Україні, яка буде представляти отих дрібних виробників і жителів сіл, які можуть через цю організацію виголошувати ідеї, виклики і пропозиції серед європейців. І ще одна важлива деталь, напевно, я як президент Асоціації дорадчих служб України хотів би на тому наголосити. От сидить голова сусідів, каже, що в підгір'ї Карпат варто розвивати. Міністр має радників, президент має радників, навіть голова Офісу президента має радників. Я думаю, що нам треба повертатися до того, щоб в кожній сільській громаді були люди, які б займалися отим підказками, допомогою, навчаннями сільських жителів. І це, напевно, не тільки буде стосуватися сільських бізнесів, а й підприємництва в сільській місцевості. Тому готові до співпраці, навіть поширення цієї програми від ФАО, USAID Agro, знову ж хтось це має робити. Сидить сьогодні голова у нас на панелі, дискутує. він не має завжди часу почути кожного чи під'їхати туди. От тому давайте знову ж просовувати ідею обов'язковості наявності російських дорадників і дорадниць у сільській місцевості, які будуть сприяти розвитку підприємництва, сімейного фермерства та кооперації. Дякую за увагу.
Дуже вам дякую. І, до речі, я думаю, що власне ваш приклад на Львівщині – це один з тих прикладів, який вартує уваги, тому що дуже багато дорадницьких практик, вони не є успішними, ваш кейс якраз саме є успішним кейсом. Тому, безумовно, ми теж будемо раді в подальшій співпраці. Колеги, чи є ще бажання в когось висловитися, чи можемо підводити риску? Тоді я буду всім дякувати. Thank you very much, Tom, for your participation. I think we can develop our relationship like a member of your organization, and at the same time, it means we are a member of European Rural Parliament. And thank you for Jonas, thank you for your presentation. If it's possible, we will invite you also to our discussion in next period, because horizontal connection is also very important to push our authority to be more efficient in adoption and could be consequent in preparation of EU entrance. Thank you very much. Всім дуже дякую. Я сказав.
Yes, just I would like to say thank you. And first of all, I was trying to give you as much information as possible, but anyway, you have to understand that you are just in the beginning, and there are many details in that whole process. So I understand that you would like to be really fast, but anyway, it's going step by step. And if you will need the advices and information in this process, I will give you if you will invite me.
Thank you very much. Всім дуже дякую.
Can I just say the same thing again, to thank you all for the invitation and to offer the same help, but not the same technical help as Jonas, but to say with your membership of ERCA and the European Rural Parliament, I hope we can help you much further into the future. But the important thing is to say that you need to build your grassroots capacity, your local organizations, to be in the correct position and with the correct linkages, both within the Ukraine to your regional and central governments, but also across the European Union and wider, to have partners so you can learn from and you can share your experiences. I've learned a lot today, and thank you once again for the privilege of being with you.
Thank you very much, but we are also interested to realize the twinning between our communities and our organization and with European communities. I think it's very important to horizontal diplomacy and develop our horizontal relationship between not only organization but also between communities. And maybe I have a proposition to maybe we can organize meeting with our board and with you board from different countries and try to maybe organize some real contacts, maybe in Poland, I don't know, maybe in Germany or in other countries, applying to EU. But generally, we can visit meeting for our self-financing. I think it's possible for every head of community. I think because Zoom, it's Zoom, but real communication, it's real communication. Всім дуже дякую. Я єдине, що хотів пану Івану Паньківу ще раз, можливо, не почув. Ми стали членами Європейського сільського парламенту ЄРК, тому давайте, може, дійсно думати про створення сільського парламенту в Україні. Ми готові базисом виступити. Всім дуже дякую і до наступних зустрічей. Ми будемо контактувати найближчим часом. Дивіться, у нас зараз на Zoom тільки от залишилися ті, хто є. У нас заплановано, і можливо ми ще, пані Марії, з вами теж маємо скомунікуватися, по кожному компоненту аграрної політики і сільського розвитку ми хочемо зробити такі круглі столи, але вже не такого великого формату, а такого формату, щоб все ж таки ті, на кого ми хочемо вплинути, не тікали з наших заходів, досиджували до кінця, тому що саме від них залежатиме прийняття тих чи інших рішень. Тому цю місію ми на себе беремо. Всім дуже дякую і сподіваємося, що чим швидше закінчиться ця довбана тривога. До зустрічі. Дякую.
Goodbye.